Welcome back to the channel, and today we're taking a look at the FOBOS Knives Tier 1 Mini. And if you don't know what FOBOS stands for, it stands for operators by operators. So their knives are intended for those operators, you know, the military guys, the paramedics, the police officers, things like that. But I am personally going to be reviewing this as an EDC fixed blade on at least how I like my EDC fixed blade. So just have that in mind whenever I'm talking about the knife. It comes with a very high quality leather sheath. You can carry it vertically or horizontally on the belt. I will say this is very tight. Whenever you feed the belt through, you definitely need to take the knife out. It's still a struggle, but you want it to be nice and tight so it doesn't get super loose on you and be floppy or anything. It has a snap closure right here, and the first time I had this in there, it is very, very tight, but it gets looser over time. It does have the little magnet or something right here that kind of sucks the blade in there. Only thing I don't like about that is that it gets stuck on all my fixed blades. Out in the woods lately, I've been enjoying carrying it scout carry. It carries well back there. I can get to it easily. And also just putting the whole sheath in my back pocket, whichever one I feel like that day. I might try vertically or get a Kydex sheath made for it. This knife costs $243. It's USA made, and we're gonna see if it's worth that price tag, or at least in my opinion. This is about the max length I like for my EDC fixed blades, coming in at 7.87 inches long with a 3.5 inch drop point blade of CPM 154 steel, which is a very well-balanced steel and a steel that I like. I don't know if I like it as much at the $243 price point, but we're gonna be testing it in just a second, so we'll see. It's got a beautiful raw stone wash finish there, and there's the Phobos logo right there. You have a decorative blade hole. Don't really know why that's there. It's not a folder. You got a swedge here and here, a forward finger choil that's nice and comfortable. I can fit my finger easily there, and also doubles as a sharpening choil. That plunge grind comes back to about right here where my fingernail is, so you can have a lot of sharpenings before it'll widen up on you. You have a very, very stout tip there, so if you need to pierce into something hard, or if you need to bore into some wood, you should be perfectly fine with that. There is jimping up top right here if you choke back, and it's pretty darn aggressive. I'm sure it's intended for gloved hands or someone who doesn't have wrecked hands like me. So, you know, just take that with a grain of salt. But I think it would have been nice if there would have been some jimping right here for whenever you choked up. It's a full tank construction, and as you can see, it has very, very chunky blade stock. Coming in at 0.187, so this is definitely geared toward hard use. Not something I really typically look for in an EDC fixed blade, especially, you know, when it's a smaller fixed blade. Those hard use tasks aren't usually as easy, but, you know, to each their own. So because of that thick blade stock, this flat grind can only come down so thin. And in this back portion right here, it's 28 to 30 thousandths behind the edge. And up here all the way to this tip right here, you can see that it is 43 thousandths at this tip. So very, very thick. However, it does come with a 19 degrees per side edge bevel. So as long as this thing's sharp, it should perform pretty good. Let's find out. I gotta say, this knife came extremely sharp out of box. It's hair popping sharp, and as long as you keep a sharp edge on it and you're not cutting something that's really thick that'll wedge into the steel, it's gonna perform just fine, especially at this point. And like I said, it's popping hair out of box, so always love to see that. It always makes my job a lot easier, and it definitely makes the knife look a lot better for sure. But as long as you're not cutting long strips like this, you should be fine. You shouldn't slide out of the cut because of that belly. Now we're testing the ergos, see how the edge wants to bite. And light pressure, you can see how easily it's making these fine feathers if you want to do something like that, or if you had to. But we start slowly increasing pressure. And once I get toward the end and I'm really starting to bear down, I'm trying to put as much weight behind the cut as I can. The top jimping is kind of bothering my hand, but my hands are a little rough. Listen to it, they're a lot of rough. And it kind of bothered me. Now, like, this is probably intended for gloved hands. You know, most operators and service people do wear gloves, so not that big of a deal. And this is where I was really happy because it is push cutting almost, and you can see me doing the pointer finger grip. Very little pressure into this 1/2-inch sisal rope. It's cutting it really, really nicely, cleanly, and because of that deep belly like that, it makes this cutting on a flat surface a breeze. It's gonna really, really shine on doing this type of cutting. Not just rope, I'm just saying on a flat cutting surface. That's where a deep bellied knife will shine. That and making finesse cuts. You know, if you want to make cuts where you're not cutting too deep, a deep belly knife is really going to excel at that. But pretty darn comfortable in the pinch grip. I think we end up getting through 130 cuts before I ran out of the piece I cut, and it still felt great. You know, like I said, 154 cm is a well balanced steel. It's a tough steel. It's a good stainless, and it can hold a reasonable edge. Now this is where you can see the thickness come into play. It's really struggling to get through this leather, and it's because it's bonding up on the side walls of the that thickness behind the edge. But everything else besides the tubing, it wasn't the easiest, but we get through it no problem. And that I sped up 3 times, so the corner cardboard was a little bit more difficult, but the 10-ounce denim, obviously it had tons of bite left, wasn't a problem at all. And we're gonna do some extra stuff with this one, being that this is more of like a hard use knife. This is some kiln dried, I don't know what kind of wood it is. I think it's oak maybe. And this stuff is very, very hard. And I had to break it down into small pieces because it's way too big for this knife. So you just got to take it piece by piece, and you can get your kindling done fairly easily. But I was beating on this thing like I never hit anything before. Should have probably used my bigger Bam Bam stick, S-Gab calls it, but I did not grab it. And it's a little curved, so it's not always easy to be accurate, but definitely did great. If you had to do something like this in the woods, you know, if this is all you had, you could get it done. You could definitely make your fine stick. Look at that slow-mo boy. Showing that thick tip, and this is just a 4x4 post that I'm just going to kind of test out that tip. I would really, really have to be bearing down on this knife to snap that tip. I would have to send it to, what's his name? God dog it, his name's the guy who breaks all the tips. Y'all know who I'm talking about. The Marlboro Man, that's what I'll call him. He could break this tip, no doubt. But, you know, if you had to pry into something, you could definitely do it. That's another advantage of a thick stock knife like this. This is just 3-stranded copper wire, like house cable. Nice first shot. Nice and clean. And let's see. I bet you there's no damage. No damage there, about right there. Let's see if I can see anything visually. One good thing about thick stock. Yeah, I have absolutely no rolling, nothing. See how that edge is after the cutting. Not bad at all. It's got one little small hang up right there and right there. But other than that, this thing is still, yeah, I could easily probably strop the entire thing back unless there's a roll or something where it's catching, but not bad. Now let's jump over to the handle area. You have green canvas micarta on this one with orange G10 liners. I like that pop of color, especially if I'm out in the woods, drop it. I might see that. You have fairly thick micarta scales. They fill out the hand nicely. They're bolt-on construction, and you have some nice and crisp Torx T20 that are very tight fitment. Love that. Now, for the most part, it was very comfortable. Now, you gotta look, I mean, I have wrecked hands from my accident. A lot of things are uncomfortable to my hands, so y'all take this with a grain of salt, and this may not even pertain to you, but for my hands, the holes, whenever I'm really bearing down, it feels weird, and the jimping, that wide space jimping here, here, and here. Now, this is with ungloved hands. Whenever I was doing the wood shaving, it was uncomfortable for my hands. You know, it may not bother you at all. I think my buddy Scab from Choir Boys Outdoors tested this one, and it didn't bother him at all. Now, he's got man hands, so like I said, you might just listen to him. My hands, it's hard for me to even talk about that kind of stuff because of the neuropathy I already have in my hands. So the other portions, very comfortable, and I didn't really even feel this or this until I was really bearing down. Now, if I slapped gloves on, it would be great. I wouldn't have to worry about that at all. You have a ginormous lanyard hole that you could fit a baby arm through, an exposed pommel right there if you needed to crack something, or less than lethal option attitude adjuster. It's pretty comfortable in all grips: pull grip, your hammer grip, gas station fighting grip. All those are pretty darn comfortable. The most comfortable, though, is definitely this hammer grip and this choked up spot and hammer grip. I like this little scoop right there. That's where I rest my thumb. If you need to push down whenever you're holding something in hand, you need a little bit more control to that edge, put your thumb up here in the saber grip. Due to the thicker blade stock, it's probably going to be a little bit weighty. Yeah, 8.51 ounces, not terrible, especially on the belt. Quick size comparison with the very good knife company Hornet and the Work Tough Gear Nomad EDC. It really reminds me a lot of the Nomad EDC, especially the way that belly goes up like that. It's a little bit bigger than both of these. Here it is next to a Spyderco Mule Team knife and the Bradford Guardian 3.5. Next we have the Montana Knife Company Speed Goat and the White River Knives Ursus Cub. Next up, we have the Lion Steel M4 and the Norden Knives Ascent. Both of these are pretty similar in overall length. Next, we have the Civivi Elementum Fixed Blade and the Ontario Rat Model 3. The Elementum Fixed Blade is a little bit longer, and the Rat 3 is almost identical in length. And lastly, we have the Vero Engineering Axon Fixed Blade and the Buck 103 Skinner. Both of these are very close in overall length as well. All right, before we even get into my nitpicks and complaints, so these are all just nitpicks, and you got to understand, I'm looking at this as the type of EDC fixed blades I enjoy carrying for the normal person. You know, if you are in the military or you're an operator, service, some sort of service type person, and you need a very overbuilt fixed blade that you're going to EDC, then yeah, this is an excellent option. I just wanted to preface that before I actually get into it, because I do like this knife. I like it a lot, but let's talk about some things that I would have loved to see different. First of all, it's fine if you want to use that super thick blade stock, but I would have loved to see this thinned out even more, because as thick as it is right now, after the first sharpening, it's going to get thicker and thicker and thicker, and it's going to be, for long, it's going to be just a sharpened pry bar. And the reason I say I've tested a lot of knives, and you don't have to have this super thick blade stock in order for a knife to be tough. You don't. I have abused knives with far thinner blade stock. I've had some that were at like 20 thousandths behind the edge and 18 degrees per side edge bevels, and I beat on them, and they've survived with no problem whatsoever. I definitely think it could have been thinned out some. That's just me, and that's fitting my needs, not, you know, the person who this is geared toward. Another thing that's probably just me, but like I said, my hands are already wrecked. I have nerve issues and stuff, and my dexterity in my hands are bad. This wide cut jimping here, and here, whenever I really bear down, it's pretty uncomfortable for my hands, along with these holes in the scales. Not terrible. The holes in the scales aren't terrible. And as long as I'm not doing some heavier wood shaving, I probably wouldn't feel the jimping. But I think it would have been just as effective if they would have went with fine cut jimping here. It would have actually gripped your finger a lot better, and it wouldn't be uncomfortable. I would have loved to see some jimping up here for the choke up spot. I think that would have helped you have a lot more control, even though you have a pretty flat spot to rest your thumb. I had no issues doing the testing, but I think it would have been even that much better to have some jimping right here, and maybe even some Vox style jimping up here to do some tip work or some finesse cutting. And instead of the large finger hole right here, I think it would have been nice just to have the lanyard hole put in this back pommel area. But I do understand that would kind of mess with the integrity of this portion as far as if you're using it as a pommel. So, you know, not the biggest deal. I got a large enough handle that I don't have to have a lanyard on there, and I'm not going to be doing chopping with this little bitty fixed blade. So, but my final thoughts. If none of the nitpicks I talked about are deal breakers for you, I think you're getting a very, very high quality USA made fixed blade. It is a little pricey for what it is. However, that said, they really, really did a good job with the finishing. I don't know who their OEM is. I don't know if it's Tops or they make these in-house, or it kind of looks like Bark River by the Sheath, but I could be wrong there. Regardless who it is, it's a top tier fixed blade, and it won't be my last. I might get one of the larger ones because, you know, those for like outdoor purposes would be great for, you know, beating. And let me know what y'all think. The CPM 154, while it's a great, well-balanced steel, and I like it a whole lot, I don't love it whenever the price tag's $243. I don't think it's, you know, super far-fetched, but it's hard to say there. So let me know what y'all think about the Tier 1 Mini. Do you own any Phobos knives? If so, what do you think, and what is your favorite? I know I saw one, I think it's a Loris or something like that. That one looks like it's really up my alley, and maybe I'll check one of those out. And I got a few more USA made fixed blade companies that I want to check out, like Reef Knives. I did contact them, and they're supposed to be sending me something to check out for the channel. Maybe I can do something with Phobos. Because like I said, I love the knife. You know, those are nitpicks I was talking about. It still performed great, and I will continue to use it. So if this one interests you, if I can find a link to this, I will add it in the description. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those down below. I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.